Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's session. This afternoon, we'll be hearing from a fantastic keynote speaker, followed by a special fireside chat. And now I'd like to welcome the session sponsor, Geoscience BC, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Hello, and welcome to today's keynote session at the 19th Annual Natural Resources Forum with our keynote speaker, the new Minister of Natural Resources, the Honourable Jonathan Wilkinson. I'm Gavin Jerome, the President and CEO of Geoscience BC, and I'm speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We're at a watershed moment. The transition to net zero by 2050 and the increase in demand for BC's natural resources that it brings mean that we must work together, a theme we will continue to hear more about this week. That's why I'm excited to let you know about a change that is coming soon for Geoscience BC. Demand for our public geoscience is changing because today's challenges, like finding critical metals and minerals to supply growing electrification needs, reducing emissions, and identifying where to safely store carbon, supporting hydrogen development, locating economic geothermal energy sources, and understanding and mitigating geohazards can only be met if we work together. Collaboration and sharing knowledge has always been at the heart of Geoscience BC, and now we're going even further. Later this month, Geoscience BC will launch a membership and sponsorship opportunity designed to bring together industry, academia, communities, Indigenous groups, and governments. When I read Minister Wilkinson's mandate letter, it confirmed to me that this is the right path for Geoscience BC. The issues our research address and the collaboration approach that we take fit well with industry and government direction. Minister Wilkinson has served as the Member of Parliament for North Vancouver since 2015 and has previously served as Minister of Environment and Climate Change and Minister of Fisheries, Oceans, and Canadian Coast Guard. Raised in Saskatchewan, he spent more than 20 years in the private sector, holding leadership positions with a number of companies dedicated to the development of green technologies. A Rhodes Scholar, Minister Wilkinson made use of his educational background in public policy, working for former Saskatchewan Premier Roy Romanow. A community leader, he has also served on several industry and charitable boards. In the modern world, as Minister Wilkinson has often said, the environment and the economy must go hand in hand. I'm excited to hear what the Minister has to say today and would like to thank him for taking the time to join us at the Natural Resources Forum. Minister, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today, and thank you for the kind introduction. Je vous joins aujourd'hui de North Vancouver, situé sur le territoire ancestral des nations Musqueam, Squamish, et Tsleil-Waututh. The global economy, as all of you know very well, is changing, and it is changing rapidly. And it's changing whether we like it or not. It is changing in significant measure because the science of climate change has told us unequivocally that it must change. This change is taking place in virtually every economic sector of every country in the world. And recently, as financial markets have begun to increasingly price climate risk into investment decisions, these changes are accelerating. Smart money is increasingly flowing away from assets with significant exposure to climate risk and towards opportunities that are compatible with a transition to a net zero world. Anyone who thinks these changes are nothing more than a political choice that can be reversed as the result of an election is missing the bigger picture, the global picture. Even if we in Canada did elect a government that wanted to abandon climate action, the results would simply be a shrinking economy and fewer jobs for Canadian workers. Because a net zero world is no longer simply a political wish, it is a competitive race amongst the world's biggest enterprises and investors. And just as any successful business must be capable of interpreting and effectively reacting to significant changes in the business environment, so countries, in order to sustain and enhance their level of prosperity, must also be capable of thoughtful response and action. It is in this context that Canada can choose to be a leader in this global economic shift, or we can let it happen to us while just hoping for the best, with all of the attendant consequences of being a late mover. If we choose to lead, we can ensure that our workers and our businesses take advantage of market opportunities that will be worth trillions of dollars. However, if we choose to let this change happen to us, the costs will be significant. And indeed, very recently, the Bank of Canada published a report showing that the cost to our economy could be 1/10 of our GDP or more. However, it's also important to say that we should not act simply out of fear. We should also act because we can see the potential economic opportunities that come with a transition to a low-carbon future. Canadians understand this. Years ago, when pollsters asked Canadians about support for addressing climate change, the biggest concern expressed was that such action could be bad for the economy. Today, when Canadians are asked the same set of questions, it's striking to see that a large majority view climate action as being good for the economy and the country's economic prospects. And you know what? They're right. They're right, particularly in the context of Canada, a country that has an abundance of both resources and talent that can create significant value during and beyond this energy transition. I believe we need to think about the energy transition in a very positive economic frame. Taking well-considered, thoughtful, and decisive action now can drive Canadian competitiveness, growth, and prosperity for decades to come. If we act to secure the economic opportunities that this transition will enable, we can not only improve our natural environment, but we will also continue to build a just, fair, and equitable society. As somebody who spent many years in the business community, I am very much aware that to sustain social programming and to create the conditions so that all Canadians have opportunities to pursue their aspirations, we must first create wealth. What we need is a plan that is based on comparative advantage, one that seeks to align the efforts and resources of all levels of government, the private sector, labor, and Indigenous peoples. Historically, Canada's natural resource sectors have played a major role in Canada's economic success and its prosperity. My department, Natural Resources Canada, has long been seen as the promoter and at times the defender of the traditional resource industries, oil and gas, mining, and forestry. These industries have been and continue to be extremely important to our economy. They support a significant chunk of economic activity and they employ many, many thousands of Canadians. However, some have questioned what the future holds for Canada's natural resources in the face of the climate challenge, and no doubt this is a great challenge. With respect to the oil and gas sector in particular, carbon emissions are high, constituting 26% of Canada's overall emissions. And this sector, among some others, often finds itself squarely in the crosshairs of those expressing vigorous climate concerns. I believe that natural resources will continue to be of central importance in driving growth and prosperity for Canada. Not just today, or not just tomorrow, but well into our future. The definition of what comprises natural resources in this country, as well as the mandate of my department, is and has been evolving quickly. It is evolving to ensure that the development of natural resources and the extraction of value can and will be consistent with the scientifically mandated imperative of climate change. And let's be clear, businesses are at times ahead of their governments in understanding this. In this regard, one needs to look no further than the commitment made last year by all of the large oil sands players to achieving net zero by 2050. Natural resources is no longer something that is solely comprised by the traditional industries that we often think about when we use those words. It also now includes various types of renewable forms of energy, be that wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, biomass, or tidal power. They include carbon-free or low-carbon energy carriers and fuels such as biofuels and hydrogen. They include the conservation of energy resources through energy efficiency initiatives. And all of these are very much founded on the development or the deployment and the development of clean technology. As Minister of Natural Resources, I am very pleased to say that the men and women who work at Natural Resources Canada, and there are over 4,500 of them, are working on innovative and exciting strategies and programs to build a sustainable natural resource economy across this country. My role and the role of my department is to work with all of you to determine how we can best utilize the abundance of resources and talent that exist in this country to define and effectively pursue the opportunities that will drive job creation and economic growth. And let me say, the uniquely Canadian approach to doing this is something that we need to ensure we are developing. We have been and are a great global trader. We know how to move products to market, how to win investment from around the world. We can certainly figure this out. To do this, I would say that we need to think about opportunities both sectorally and regionally. The opportunities from a sectoral perspective will come from new demand and from new products that act as lower carbon alternatives, such as electric cars, battery technology, enhanced demand for critical minerals and hydrogen, clean technologies, and new uses for old products, as we're seeing with things like the Bitumen Beyond Combustion program that Alberta Innovates has been developing in Alberta. There will also be opportunities created by increased demand for traditional goods produced in an ultra-low carbon manner, such as low-carbon steel and aluminum. Regionally, each province has a relatively unique mix of its own natural resources, so the economic opportunities available to each of them, and therefore the approaches to a clean energy transition, will be different and need to be different across the country. In Alberta, such opportunities would involve hydrogen derived from natural gas. It would involve CCUS and critical minerals, renewable energy, and biofuels. But in Quebec, the list would be more likely to focus on hydrogen from electrolysis, electricity exports, critical minerals, and battery development and production. Over the past several years, our government has focused on working with industry to develop strategies and to pursue the various opportunities that are available to us. These efforts have certainly included pollution pricing and regulation, but they have also relied heavily on strategic investments through the Clean Fuels Fund, the Net Zero Accelerator, and funding for clean technology and renewable energy. Just recently, I would note the president of the International Energy Agency stated that Canada has shown impressive leadership both at home and abroad on clean and equitable energy transitions. And this praise gives me great confidence that we are heading in the right direction. And we can certainly see this progress for ourselves. Internationally, Apple, one of the world's biggest companies by market cap, is already carbon neutral in its operations. In the last year alone, it doubled the number of its suppliers who are committed to using clean energy. Within 8 years, the company intends to be carbon neutral across its entire supply chain. Microsoft, another one of the world's largest companies by market cap, plans to be carbon negative in 8 years. By 2050, it wants to have removed from the environment all of the carbon the company has emitted since it was founded almost 50 years ago. Today, a fifth of the world's 2,000 largest public companies have net zero goals, companies with combined sales of almost $14 trillion. But perhaps more importantly, we see this progress here at home. Investments in renewables have increased dramatically. Last year, Amazon invested $700 million in a solar farm in Alberta, and it chose Alberta specifically because it would have access to renewable energy. We have seen the manufacturing process for aluminum go green in Quebec with investments from Alcoa Canada and Rio Tinto. In biofuels, Enerchem is building a $900 million plant in Quebec in partnership with Shell and Suncor, while Covenant Energy is building a facility in Estevan, Saskatchewan to produce renewable diesel and aviation fuel from canola. On electric vehicles, the Government of Ontario has put forward what it calls a flagship initiative to secure production mandates for hybrid and electric vehicles, and we've seen success already with Ford committing to a mandate with respect to electric vehicles. And on batteries, we've seen Tesla invest in the battery research being done at Dalhousie University in Halifax. And in Alberta, Air Products has announced a multi-billion-dollar plan to build a landmark new net zero hydrogen energy complex that it hopes will make Edmonton the center of Western Canada's hydrogen economy. And as you may have heard, this year, the Global Clean Tech Group has named 13 Canadian companies to its list of the world's top 100 clean tech companies. And I'm pleased to say that half of these companies are actually located right here in British Columbia. So we are already punching above our weight. However, there remains much to do if we are to truly seize the opportunities that are available to Canada. In my conversations with many of you and many businesses across this country, what I've heard is that governments need to work together at all levels to provide certainty that will enable investment, that we need to ensure better alignment and coordination with respect to regulations and processes amongst federal and provincial governments, that you are looking for governments to assist with market failures where they exist, and for us to assist with technology deployment and early commercial deployment of such technology, as well as with infrastructure that would facilitate the development of things like critical minerals. You've also been clear that you are ready and willing to bring capital and expertise to the table to work in a collaborative fashion. And I certainly hear you. Later this year, I intend to commence a dialogue process, or should I say processes, at the regional level that will focus on defining key opportunities that are regionally, provincially relevant. We will look to align resources, timelines, and regulatory approaches between federal and provincial governments, industry, labor, and Indigenous peoples that will allow us and enable us to collectively accelerate economic activity and to position Canada as a leader in areas where we are, or we should be able to develop a sustainable competitive advantage in the world. Finally, there is one other matter that requires some attention. It relates to the uncertainty and potentially the anxiety that workers in some industries feel about the energy transition. One benefit beyond the direct economic benefits that the regional dialogue process I just noted will provide is that it should enable Canadians to better understand what the jobs of the future will look like. And I would say that in many cases, in my view, the jobs of the future will not look that much different from many of the jobs that exist today. A hydrogen production facility utilizing carbon capture technology will not, in terms of the required skills, look very much different from an existing refinery. The same would hold true for a biofuels plant. That is certainly not to say that every single job that exists in today's economy has a perfect twin in a net zero economy. And it's not to say that the transition will be perfectly smooth for every individual and every community. But it is to say that there is considerable overlap between the things that we do today and the things that we will be doing tomorrow, and that this overlap should not be underestimated. However, in some cases, the labor force requirements of the future will differ from those today, and that is why thoughtful planning is critically important. All of us need to anticipate and prepare for the types of training and supports required to enable some of the workforce to transition their skills to the new low-carbon economy, ensuring sustainable jobs now and into our collective future. Our challenge as a country is not going to be one of looking at how we can usefully and constructively employ displaced workers. Rather, I firmly believe our collective challenge is far more likely to be one of labor shortage and how we can find enough workers to be able to seize all of the opportunities that are available to Canada and to Canadians. There are those who believe that there is an inescapable tension between natural resource development and climate action, that what's good for one is inevitably bad for the other. My key takeaway for you today is that not only is that not true, the opposite is true. Canada, in significant measure, is a natural resource-based economy. And as we move forward toward a low-carbon future, Canada will remain an economy in which natural resources continue to make an indispensable contribution to ongoing prosperity. If we are thoughtful and determined in our actions, it will become a sustainable natural resource economy. In the economy of today and tomorrow, strategies for climate action and economic prosperity are and must be one and the same. What Canada needs at this moment is a thoughtful, collaborative, ambitious economic strategy for long-term prosperity in every region in this country, one that is aligned with our necessary and ambitious climate and nature conservation goals. This strategy will position Canada and Canadians to take advantage of the massive, unprecedented economic opportunities that acting on climate change presents, and it will put us in a leadership position in the global transition. So I will close where I began. The global economy is changing, and there's no going back. Climate action is now underway in every corner of the world, and the smart money is flocking to sustainable investments. This transition is happening, and in Canada, we face a choice. We can let it happen to us and suffer the economic and social consequences, or we can play to our historic strengths. We can work together to develop a competitive, highly prosperous, sustainable, natural resources-driven economy, an economy that creates wealth and jobs in every region of this country, while ensuring at the same time that we achieve our ambitious climate and nature goals. I am energized and motivated by all of the possibilities and the great opportunities that lie ahead of us, and I hope that you are too. In fact, I'm counting on it. So thank you again for inviting me to be with you today, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Minister Wilkinson. That concludes our afternoon keynote address. Please return to the agenda, select the next session to view the fireside chat titled The Pathway to Net Zero. We will see you in a few minutes.